So good morning, everyone. It is morning, and on the East Coast time, it's 8:30. Welcome to this morning's CIO Insights. We're still having a little bit of this virtually, and hope to see many of you in real time very soon. So thanks for joining. We are always thrilled to convene a bunch of chief information officers. We look forward to the panelists. We had conversations right before that you all have logged in, and I've got to tell you, you're in for a treat. We have the diversity that is probably unmatched, and that is industries of healthcare, manufacturing, banking, and nonprofit or an association. So as with many of our other virtual CIO Insights, we have time for some networking at the end of the panel discussion. This, we have a chat. Most of you will be put on mute, but use that chat to ask questions. Our facilitator will pay attention to those questions at the end, and we'll have a chance for lots of conversation. So before we get started, I want to thank everyone who are sponsors, and those are two sponsors for us, and they are partners as well. So that's what we think of. We'd like you to get to know our sponsors because they're part of our ecosystem and they matter, and they are also help building the region. And the first one is CGI. They were founded, if you don't know them, you really should. They were founded in 1976. Hard to believe. They're one of the world's largest IT and business consulting firms with over 400 people here in Pittsburgh as well, even more people in Columbus. We like to think of Columbus as part of our region, and they have been in our region for over 30 years. They've actually made acquisitions. They have great diverse talent, and they work side by side with their customers in their own innovation centers. And they have lots of good stories and case studies to talk about their work. And we have Manoj Mishra, who's here with us this morning. And then we have a supporting sponsor, is Click. And if you don't know Click, you should pay attention because they have a vision of this data literate world where everyone can use data and analytics to improve decision-making and solve their most challenging problems. That means for everyone. So end-to-end platform, real data integration and analytics on a cloud platform to close the gaps between data insights and actions. So they do business in over 100 countries, and they have over 50,000 customers worldwide. So they are not small, and we're thrilled to have them here in our region. So I am going to quickly pass the baton and introduce Manoj Mishra. He is Vice President of Consulting Services here at CGI. So Manoj.
Thank you, Audrey, and good morning all. And I couldn't agree more with Audrey. You all are in for a treat. This is going to be a very passionate discussion. As I said, we couldn't stop ourselves before this, some of the topics that we're talking about. As Audrey said, very diverse panel. So we have leaders from the Pittsburgh area. We have leaders from manufacturing, healthcare, banking. So again, we will get to hear a lot of diverse views from different industries. And the timing of this panel discussion could not be more appropriate, right? So it's sort of transitioning from pandemic to post-pandemic. I don't know exactly where we are, but again, certainly in a state of flux. And again, a lot of this conversation that we'll hear today would actually reflect that. So without further ado, I would like to basically go ahead and request our panelists to introduce themselves, talk about their role, talk about what they're doing in the Pittsburgh area and their responsibility. So Ron, may I request you to start first, please?
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Ron Baxter. I am the Director of Technology at JV Manufacturing Company. JV Manufacturing is a tool and die company about 20 miles northeast of Pittsburgh. We've just recently celebrated our 46th anniversary and have customers worldwide in a variety of fields. As Director of Technology, I'm responsible for all information technology and operation technology and the interaction between the two. I'm also, part of my role is to investigate and implement technical solutions to make JV as efficient as possible. I have a relatively small team. Zach Zollner is my full stack developer. Jared Jack is my inspection system programmer. Logan Falala is a security analyst, and our newest software developer is Jordan Sell. And currently we're primarily back in the office with just a few people occasionally working at home.
Thank you, Ron. Again, welcome to the panel. Ryan, may I request you to go next, please?
Ryan Conover. I am the Director of Information Services at the Oncology Nursing Society. We're a nonprofit association. We're based out by the airport, the RIDC Park West. We serve about 35,000 members. We have generally about 100,000 people that interact with our organization a year, upwards of 500,000 users that we support on our systems. Our IT team's a little bit of a hybrid. We have IT infrastructure, traditional help desk and team, and then we also have a larger software development group that includes staff, internal augmented resources overseas, program managers, BAs, and stuff like that. We do a lot of interesting things, not just traditional support of, I'll say, enterprise applications, but we do a lot of customer-facing application development and services we develop for our customers to deliver our content. Over the past year, we've been fully remote. Prior to the pandemic, we did allow people to work full-time remote and part-time, and we're kind of still fully remote, but our offices are going to be open up officially back on Labor Day. So we have a few that are looking forward to go back, and we have others that are looking to stay remote permanently. So
again, thank you, Ryan. Welcome to the panel. Dr. John Lee.
I am John Lee. I'm Chief Medical Information Officer at Allegheny Health, and this particular position is a bit of a unusual for a classic Chief Medical Information Officer position. It's sort of a hybrid Chief Information Officer, Chief Medical Information Officer position. I have about 300 FTEs that report up through me. We do things. We're responsible for basically delivering the electronic and digital medium through which all of our practitioners deliver care. So many of you have heard about this transformation into electronic medical records, for better or for worse, over the past 10 years. And that is what we're generally responsible for. And if you haven't heard of it, the big thing that drives me and drives what I think that we can do with healthcare is something called the quadruple aim, and that is reduced costs, improve quality, improve the patient experience, and improve the provider experience. And if you know anything about the innards of healthcare, the key piece to that is information technology and reducing all those points of friction that we have.
Absolutely. Again, thank you, John, and welcome to the panel. Last but not the least, Justin.
Yes, thank you. Justin Sansonetti, CTO here for TriState Capital Bank. I oversee our support, desktop services, our infrastructure, networking. I also have a pretty big handle over our entire cybersecurity initiatives here as it pertains to technology. Our cybersecurity team, obviously with being a bank, cybersecurity, information security is a big deal for us. That actually reports up through our risk and compliance team. However, technology and my team have a huge handle in those efforts. As far as work from home, and we've been working from home now since March of 2020. We just returned, leadership returned to the office this past Monday, full time. We are now roughly 50% returned for our operations and sales. I would say before the pandemic, we were roughly, a work from home was not really an option for the most part, right? We have a lot of sales teams in different parts of the country. They work from home, so we had a pretty good plan already set in place in terms of mobility. I would say one of the things that we learned over the pandemic and what we're still learning is making sure it's a hybrid environment, meaning that we can move on the fly and adjust pretty quickly. But outside of that, my role really, the bank has been able to continue to grow throughout the pandemic. So we're very fortunate for that. Our employees, number of employees has grown. So, we're actually welcoming the ability to go back into the office, have face-to-face conversations, and collaborate.
All right. Again, thank you, Justin, and welcome to the panel. And again, as I said, in today's world, you cannot start a panel discussion without a pandemic question, and I certainly cannot buckle the trend. So my first question, and Justin, I would request you to take this, and we'll ask each panelist, is a two-part question, right? So the first part is, now that the pandemic is sort of winding down, how are you and your organization pivoting? And the second and sort of most important is, what's the one long-term impact that you see of this pandemic that you think is going to last for years in your industry? So Justin, if you would take that first, please.
Yeah, so, like I said, how we're pivoting right now is we are having an approach back into the office. We want it to be 100%. Hopefully by the end of the year would be, I think, our plans to get back into the office. Being a sales organization, we're really reliant on getting in front of people. That's been tough, right, over the last 15 months to have those conversations with clients and be able to get in front of people and, be passionate. I think just this right here, I think early on in the pandemic, we had video conferencing and maybe a quarter of the people had their video turned on, right? And I think when you're dealing with sales and you're dealing with just people in general, you want to be able to see those facial expressions. You want to be able to kind of read off of the room and how things are going. So we're pivoting back into the office. I think one of the long lasting things that as an organization, we need to prepare for is we can't have a short-term memory. We have to remember what happened. And I think history normally repeats itself. So we don't want to get too comfortable with the fact that, yeah, we're going to be back into the office, but we want to be able to make sure we're as agile as possible and we can change directions on the fly. Because I'm sure a lot of people last March probably had a lot of fire drills going on at that time. And there's a lot of people that were just making sure we could keep the lights on. I think if this happens again, and it might not be a pandemic, it could be another scenario, right? I think DRCOB plans have been at the forefront of a lot of my discussions over the last 15 months, because you're not just talking about pandemics, you're talking about any type of scenario that could, uproot you out of your, headquarters or wherever it might be. So that's how I think it's changed us a lot. And I think just going forward, we're looking to invest more and more in virtual communications, cloud services, and then just overall, I think video conferencing has been a big touch point for us as well over the last year to 15 months.
Yep. Again, thank you, Justin. I think you're exactly right? I think we probably see, and we see that within CGI as sort of we were moving from a 2D world to a 3D world, and we'll now see a sort of a hybrid 2D and a 3D world. So again, very nicely put. So John, again, your industry, you are in a very different industry, very people-centric industry. So how are you pivoting, and what's the long-term impact that you see in the healthcare industry?
So I think, as with so many things, technology, we were discussing before we got on how 6 months ago everybody was saying that nobody's coming back to the office ever again. But I think that sort of hyperbole often bites us when we work in the field of technology. Another example would be self-driving cars, that we were thinking that nobody's ever going to drive again. But the reality of the actual problems that we face and the nuances of how to deal with some of the, like particularly the edge cases. But like if you have a self-driving car, the edge case could be you kill somebody because the car didn't recognize that person walking across the street. So I think with regard to healthcare, telemedicine has been an enormous, has had an enormous boost. But interestingly, as the pandemic has lifted, the telemedicine numbers have dropped precipitously. I think a lot of that, the reason for that has to do with some of the structure of how we pay for healthcare, and there's also a lot of just a lot of legacy thought. So I think there's still going to be some inertia, but I do think that just like with self-driving cars, the thing that's going to, I think the biggest impediment to fully self-driving cars is that the other safety technology, like automatic lane centering, automatic braking, and those sorts of things are actually going to be the biggest impediment to getting to fully self-driving cars. And so there's going to be this hybrid environment. The same thing is going to occur in healthcare, where you can potentially get 50, 60, 70% of your healthcare just virtually. But then be strategic with finding those focal touch points where you actually have to go in and get some sort of physical interaction with the healthcare system. And I think other technologies will start coming will start surfacing as a result of that sort of hybrid environment. There's already talk of MRI and CT scan machines that will be housed in vans, so that then instead of you schlepping to the imaging center, it can come to you, and then you just walk into the van, you get your imaging center, you walk back into your living room where you're working from home, and then that goes to the next appointment. So there's, I think you very much will be very much a hybrid environment.
Thank you, John. And I would welcome that, right? I would welcome healthcare coming to me rather than me going to healthcare. So I like that van idea. So again, Ryan, a very similar industry, but a different sort of flavor. So what are your thoughts on how you are pivoting and so the long-term impact that you see, Ryan?
I mean, a couple of different impacts. I'd say the biggest one for us is in the next year, we can get back to hosting in-person events. A big driver for us is building the community for oncology nurses and whatnot. And it's hard to do that when you can't do anything in person. So a lot of our events and stuff like that, hopefully are going to go back. But I'll say the legacy of the pandemic is, I think there's going to be a lot more options for that hybrid model, having virtual options for people to connect. We've had online communities and things like that. I think two things have happened. One is people that have never used those before or had no interest in them, used them during the pandemic, got used to them and said, hey, this isn't that bad. The platforms have gotten a lot better for interacting and gotten comfortable using those tools. And then now you're at the point where, is it convenient for me to go in person to this event or that event, or can I attend virtually, depending on my flying across the country, how much value it has, but I can still give me an option that still lets me go and be able to attend even remotely. A lot of what we've always done has delivered online services like online courses, online training. A lot of our content's delivered online. So a lot of the pandemic probably more and more reinforced the ability to deliver it digitally. And then I think the other big thing is, from an internal standpoint for us, we've always allowed telecommuting with our organization. We've had some full-time telecommuters and part-time telecommuters. In our case, going back, we're opening a door that everybody can be a full-time telecommuter, but you still have the option to come to the office if you need to collaborate, or if there's certain purpose or point to it. So being able to get back to that, and I think that's impacted our labor market too, where we've been mostly focused on, say, recruiting out of the Pittsburgh market because we're local. But during the pandemic, we realized, I don't say we woke up, but we realized how many people at any project we're working on aren't in the building anyway. Our vendors and partners we work with are spread across the US, spread internationally now, that there's actually, even pre-pandemic, rare instances that we had an entire project team in the room anyway. So, is it a huge advantage? And conclusion, a lot of times, is not really. It doesn't matter too much, at least in the space that we are in. So, post-pandemic, I see us being still more remote centric for our workforce and whatnot. So the challenges going forward for us, securing that. How do we secure a remote, workforce permanently? More so down to the endpoint of how they're accessing all our information and data. How can you handle that? So I think that's a challenge going forward.
Sure. Again, thank you, Ryan. And as I said, even I was a skeptic when this whole pandemic started of these online or remote only conferences, but I feel the pandemic has actually accelerated digital adoption like 10 years. I think I do feel that's coming. But again, Ron, very interested to hear your perspective. Again, manufacturing industry has always been very different, and sort of having digital touch points have been challenging. So how are you pivoting, and what's the one long-term impact that you see in your industry?
Well, like I said, in manufacturing, it was, when the pandemic started, it was kind of difficult to pivot quickly in that instance, because in manufacturing, you really don't have much option to work from home. So we had to figure out what we're going to do with the operators who have to be at their machines, what we're going to do with the office personnel who have not worked from home. So what we had to do was split up our shifts for operators so that there was less interaction. And we had to, I mean, there was a mass rush to get laptops, get anything that we could to get all of our office personnel, anyone who could possibly work from home, to work from home. So that was just a crazy time. And then, so after that, and now that the pandemic is kind of, letting up a bit in the US, so we've moved nearly everyone back to their normal daily shifts. We've moved the vast majority of people back into the office. So we're nearly back to normal, but we now have more of an option to work from home if we need to. We've pushed heavily over the last year into mobile apps, mobile services, getting everything that we possibly can online so that data and information is available anywhere at home or not. So pivoting now, it's just trying to get everyone back face to face if possible, getting used to seeing people's chins because that was just a shock after wearing masks for so long. Yeah. So we're all getting used to that. But it is nice to be able to have that face-to-face interaction. Like John said, if you have an idea, it's a lot easier if you can go to the person that you need to speak to and say, okay, I have this idea, and talk face-to-face instead of setting up a meeting. It's just a lot more convenient. But the hybrid workforce, I think that's just going to be a given now. I don't think there's any way that we're going to get away from that. So long term, I'm pushing more and more to get as much as we can digitized, as much as we can into the cloud, so that there are less hurdles to work from home or work anywhere, and also if necessary, hire remote workers and they still have access to all the information that they need to.
Absolutely. And Ron, as I said, I think we talked to global CIOs, right? And one theme that we're hearing, and you sort of reiterated, that the future of work is going to change significantly, right? And I think all of you sort of indicated that the hybrid work is coming. So I think that's probably one of the long-term impact of this pandemic. And again, switching gears, and I'm going to pick up a very hot button issue, right? Talent, staffing. So again, I'm going to request Justin, you to sort of take this question first, and then I'll look for reactions from others. How has your organization been impacted from a staffing and talent perspective? And how are you addressing it? What are the challenges that you see? And what has worked for you, and what is still sort of is a big challenge for you? Again, Justin, if you would start us off, please.
Yeah, I think from a technology perspective, I mean, our staffing here, we've added roughly 4 positions. And just for a background on our size, our infrastructure team right now is comprised of 3 people. Support desktop services is another 3 people. So that team has actually tripled in size over the last 18 months. We have not necessarily seen any major staffing issues to this point. As far as recruiting talent, I think it is taking longer than it has in the past. And I think a lot of that can be attributed to the fact that, like the topics that were brought up earlier, we're no longer just competing with other organizations that require people in the office, or, we're competing across all the industries. And I think what we'll see, from a technology perspective, we outsource a lot of our development or custom development for a lot of our enterprise applications here at the bank. We have a lot of trusted partners we do business with. So most of our recruiting efforts are revolved around the support infrastructure and our reporting services side of the house. But to date, I'll be honest, we have not had a ton of hardship in terms of recruiting. But I think time will tell over the next 12 to 18 months as different organizations start to take different approaches to that model, whether or not you're going to have a hybrid environment, work from home. And I think that's where the competition will start to spike at in terms of being able to recruit.
Sure. Again, thank you, Justin. So it's interesting that you sort of say that, right? Because I think we are seeing this play out differently. So again, John, your reaction: how is this impacting your ability to get talent? And then are you looking at different models, different ways of adapting with everything going on?
Yeah, so we are actually already starting to see a trickle of talent being poached by national players, and I think part of it is a big part of it is salary. So I think local Pittsburgh companies who are very knowledge worker heavy and who have a workforce who can work from really anywhere may see some sort of impact on that if their salary structure isn't taking into view the competition from a national perspective. The other perspective, though, is that we are hoping to actually increase our work from remote worker workforce and start being the poacher instead of the poachee. And I think that there are some unique things that we can do, particularly at AHN and Highmark, as a combined payer provider organization, where we can actually attract talent as well. So I think it goes both ways, and it's going to be a very different paradigm going forward, particularly for health workers.
Absolutely. And I think, John, I love that poacher of the poachee, right? That's a very interesting way to look at it. So Ron, how about you? Like, are you facing challenges, and how are you seeing it from where you are?
Yeah, we're facing a lot of staffing changes or staffing problems in general. Ironically, in the last year, we've probably hired a good 10 people. And we have a relatively small workforce. We have about 130 people at the moment. Like I said, that increased about 10. We had a lot of applicants. The problem we have is that we get a lot of applicants, but we need applicants that are somewhat skilled, even to operate machines, some kind of skilled labor, and we also need people who are going to come to work reliably. We've also had a problem with being that some of the jobs that we are hurting for and that we do need people for are lower paying jobs. So the unemployment has caused an effect where, with the extra unemployment that because of the pandemic, people could potentially be making almost as much as they would be if they got hired. So I think that's a problem that we're facing on our shop floor. But we are also looking at more options, or we're open more to relocating from different areas of the country if we can find a good employee. We're also looking at remote work where that can be done. So there are a number of areas where we're having challenges, but luckily we have been able to hire a lot of good employees over the last year. But it's always a struggle to find employees that are going to, that are somewhat skilled, have a good math background, and are going to come to work reliably. That unfortunately we have to deal with that on a frequent basis.
So again, thank you, Ron. And again, I do feel different perspective, right? I think it's very important to sort of marry all the perspectives. So again, I appreciate, I'm kind of excited about this panel because we're coming from different views. So again, I'm going to switch gears one more time and then move to the world of AI. Okay, and then Ryan, I'm going to request you to take this question. And as I said, maybe a month back, right, we concluded as part of PTC, a big data and AI conference. So we talked about how AI is changing the world. But I'm going to pose this question and request you to be as candid as possible. how real is AI? I want to, again, as leaders, you sit at the top of the house. So I'm very interested to hear how real is AI, and is it really adding value to your industry, or is it just a buzzword? Again, Ryan, if you can take this first, but I would love to hear everyone's perspective on this one.
At least in our industry, I think it's more buzz than anything. I've seen very small applications of what many vendors are labeling as AI. Chatbots is probably one of the biggest ones I've seen for interfacing with customers. It's getting there, it's evolving. I don't think it's there yet. I've seen good applications within security products and services where they're using AI to analyze large sets of data for like intrusion detection and things like that, anomalies in networking data. But I'll see AI automation replacing, I'll say employees for at least our industry, just not there yet. It's not something that's going to replace. And I think kind of what John was saying, if you're in an industry that has a lot of edge cases and various people-centric things, I think it's going to be hard to replace it with AI. Even like the autonomous cars, people have vision. Oh, you're going to see autonomous cars, buses, everything are on the street in 5 years. Yeah. That's probably a stretch, right? There's going to be really specific applications where it makes sense. And then others that it's still, 10, 15 years away from really replacing a person to do it. So I think still, where you have a very repetitive type task, very opportunistic to replace it with AI functions. But if you have something that takes a lot of judgment, a lot of understanding, or even just empathy or interaction with people, I don't see AI replacing that right now, anytime soon. So.
Sure. Again, thank you, Ryan. I think, and you talked about chatbots, right? And I think we are seeing the scope of AI sort of getting broader and broader, right? So we use this term conversational AI, which is essentially is chatbot. So very interesting to see that even the scope of AI is sort of broader than what we originally envisioned. So Justin, again, banking, I know that, most banks, right, they call themselves a technology organization to start with, a paradigm shift from where you were like a decade ago. So very interesting to see your perspective on how you see AI, and is it real for you?
Yeah, so I think, in my opinion, right, I think when you look at artificial intelligence, you have to have a foundation of digitization already in place, right? If you have a lot of people-centric tasks that are already happening, it's gonna be very hard to put AI into that. So with that said, I will say about 18 months ago, Glenn Matamoros, who is Executive Vice President of IT and Operations, that's who I report up through, he came into our operations environment, and this is pre-pandemic, and he saw the need to stop putting people at problems, right? Stop throwing more and more people at problems. Let's implement RPA, digital workflow, and that's what we're still in the process of doing. He's leading those efforts with the assistance of myself and other members of our technology team. And I think what we're seeing is, looking at from the life of a loan, right? That's just a process, just like any other industry has a process. If you can map out that process, that manual process, and you might have 10 to 15 touches from a physical person, right? We're never going to be able to completely remove the person out of it. There's like the previous person said, like we're talking about empathy, right? If you have to talk to someone, if you're servicing somebody, that still requires that human touch, and we don't want to lose that. But where we're taking physical papers from one desk to another desk for signatures and things like that, I think that's where we're starting to digitize a lot of that work. And it's going to be a long process, and it's not something that just starts and there's never really a finish date to that. It's an ongoing process. And we're doing that not just for day-to-day functionality, but we're doing it for our servicing as well. And I think once you lay that foundation, then there's possibly opportunities to bring in AI. Chatbots, I think it's good in theory. I think in our organization, we probably don't want anything to do with that type of technology, just because we want that personable face-to-face client interaction. That's what essentially our business, that's what separates us from a lot of the competition, is that face-to-face. And we don't really do much, behind the scenes to letting people send in emails or doing chat bots and things like that. We want to be very personable. So AI is very real for us, but I think we're probably about 2 to 3 years out from truly being able to leverage that. Right now, we're focused on that RPA piece and digitizing those workflows that currently happen today.
Sure. Again, thank you, Justin. And I think you're exactly right, right? You talked about AI is not a magic thing that happens, right? You have to put the foundation of digitization. And to your point, we are working with many banks where we're seeing that, and exactly what you said, where AI is actually applied in driving efficiency in the back office processes and making it more seamless and straight through than in the front offices. So again, thank you for that perspective. John, looking for your perspective, I think what is AI going to do in the healthcare, right? I know you're going to get vans for MRI. How would AI change the experience of a patient and a provider relationship?
So I am actually very bullish on AI, even to the extent that I helped form a physician AI society recently. What people may not realize is the amount of I guess, for lack of a better word, predictable tedium that exists in healthcare. So, for instance, if I, as a physician, am taking care of a specific type of patient, I may look at the same things in the chart every single time, and I have to do multiple clicks, or in the paper world, flip the pages of the chart multiple times and look at the same thing over and over again. We can't predict that. There are data in the system where we can predict that and then actually tee up that information for the physician. So the physician, instead of a 5-minute encounter, it becomes a 2-minute encounter because they are not hunting and pecking and searching for things. The other thing is in terms of, we've done a lot in medicine over the many decades in terms of risk prediction. And what we've done is we've crystallized many of our almost heuristic insights into relatively simple tools that have anywhere between a half dozen or a dozen different features that then we cobble together and say, yes, according to this particular tool, you are at high risk, or you are at low risk for having a heart attack in the emergency room.
We may have lost John. John,
Is my connection bad?
Yeah, you're back now. So
okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So we can do some sort of prediction, but instead of having half a dozen to a dozen features, have hundreds or thousands of different features that then can give us far more precision with that prediction. But to the point that was made before, we need to have really good data. Unfortunately, in medicine, we're notorious for having really, really crappy, dirty data. So we have to fix that problem too. But I do think that the ball is rolling, and I do think that we're going to start seeing a lot of that kind of stuff very quickly. And I think there's probably going to be an inflection point sometime in the next couple of years where all of a sudden it's just on us, it surrounds us.
Sure. Again, thank you for sharing that. I think it just reminds me. So I just saw a billboard in Pittsburgh which CMU said we are still hiring humans. So it just kind of underlines the fact that bots at least are real in our vision. Ron, how about in your industry? Do you see elements of AI? Do you see that disrupting it in the near future or like long term?
Yeah, I think there has been so much hype over AI in the last few years. I think it's, for a typical company, it's kind of fallen short, and most of it's seen as a buzzword. I do think there is some confusion maybe about automating redundant processes and artificial intelligence. The way that I see artificial intelligence is that you have human intelligence where people are making the decisions. Then you have artificial intelligence where this artificial intelligence is making decisions that would typically require a human to make. So there are a couple instances at JV where I think that we kind of have some sort of AI. We're currently implementing a scheduling system that typically would take a few people to decide what the schedule is for all the jobs to go through our company. And with this software, as long as we have the data, like Justin was saying, in our ERP system, then we can set dates, and this software will actually do all the calculations and make the decisions on when we should start these jobs, when they should be in certain areas of our building, and when they should be finished. So I kind of see that as an AI concept. And then also we, with probably a lot of companies, us included, we've put in face recognition technology, and with the temperature scanners and whatnot. So I kind of see that as AI also, is where instead of someone deciding if you're allowed to come in the building by your face and your temperature, then you have this machine making that decision and letting you into the building depending on the face that it recognizes. But that also depends on the data, because we have to have this database of pictures of all our employees. Otherwise, it can't make those decisions. So we are implementing AI. I actively look for AI solutions because I think it can make a huge difference. I just think there's been so much hype over it over the last few years that it hasn't lived up to the expectations as of yet. But I think there's still a long road to go.
No, and I think you make a good point, right? As human intelligence is very broad, so is AI. And then with all these technologies, this whole hype cycle that it goes through, right? So depending on where you're in the hype cycle, you probably see more hype than value. And again, I would love to keep talking on this topic alone, but I know we are time constrained, so I'm going to skip to my one of my favorite question and to this panelist is, what support, and maybe Ron, you can lead us, right? What support you're looking from the technology community in Pittsburgh? How can organizations help you? What are you looking for? What should we as technology partners do to help you? So again, challenge us, but share your insight as well.
Well, talent is always a problem. I think that's a problem in all our companies. Finding the correct staffing, finding good talent that's going to stick around, finding long-term talent, finding talent that isn't just job hopping, finding talent that is responsible and skilled. So any help with talent recruitment is helpful. Also security. Now that everything, JV is pushing, to go to a lot of cloud services. We need that security. That a year ago I hired a security analyst because I knew that we were going to need to go heavily into security issues now that we're moving everything as much as we can cloud-based. And I'm always looking for new innovative technologies. I like to look into startups. I like to look at anything out of the ordinary that makes you think, how could this possibly use? How could this reinvent the way that we do some of our processes? So those are some of the ways that
Sure.
that I look to the outside technology sponsors to help us out.
Sure. Again, and thank you, Justin. Again, anything you want to add to it? 30 seconds.
I think Ron covered a lot of that, right? I think the biggest thing for us as an organization, we are trying to leverage cloud as much as possible, right? When you have limited staffing internally, you want to make sure that you're leveraging solutions that can give you that high availability, easily to scale. So I think in terms of just how you procure that and make those decisions around the different types of technology is a big deal for us. And I think having vendors that have as much of a non-biased view as possible around those technologies just helps us to build for the future and not build into, not build in silos and then have to change the technology 3 to 5 years down the road, right? I think that's one of the biggest keys for us, is to just have that support from the community, the vendors, and just really to have that awareness around what we're building, how we're building it, and be mindful and thoughtful around the vendors and the technology we're choosing.
Sure. Again, thank you, Justin. Ryan, anything you want to add?
No, I think Ron and Justin hit it. I'd say maybe the one other thing is that community. I think it's really important to get events like this and others with tech leaders talking, because, you know, it's kind of one of those things. A lot of times the best ideas are built upon others. It's not that, you know, pure invention of, I'm going to come up with this crazy idea. Generally, you heard some basis to build upon someone else's. So I think the more that you have communities of tech, whether software developers, infrastructure, talent, facilitating those groups to get together, I think the better. But then also as leaders, encourage our staffs and others in the community to participate. It's one thing to have them, but you need participation. So,
again, and John, your final words.
So I think I have noticed that a common theme amongst all the conversations that we've had is the concept of hybridization. And I think that if technology leaders keep that in mind and realize that, hey, the technology is there not to replace humans, but to make the humans better. You know, whether it's remote working technology or predictive tools within medicine, or even near self-driving cars, but that still have humans in the loop, so that it's safer, but it's less fatiguing to drive. I think if you have that sort of mindset and strategic secular orientation, then I think that's going to be a winner, rather than thinking that technology is going to be an all-in-one solution.
Absolutely. Human in the loop is the key. So again, thank you, John. So again, I don't know, Monica, if you have time for, I think we may be out of time.
Yeah, take a couple of minutes for questions. That's fine.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Monica. So again, a very engaging conversation. I feel it's like an appetizer. I can go on for an hour more for sure. But I see a question from Susanna Maduro, and I think it's to Ryan, directed at you, Ryan, saying, regarding telemedicine, especially oncology, I can't imagine hard of hearing, hard of seeing elderly patients getting the level of detailed cancer care they need without doctors or nurses being able to see in person. What is unseen via remote interaction? Many times these patients don't have access to the necessary technology or an advocate who can walk them through a technology interaction, let alone help them. Given your understanding of AI, it's apparent that you understand and are working through the newness of this technology direction. So I don't know, maybe a reaction to what she's saying, Ryan?
Yeah, as an association, just probably even a better question for John than myself, AHN, other than just kind of what we're reading and seeing from the ONS perspective is, yes, I think more and more telemedicine is going to happen. There's probably going to be in the future more, I'll say, technology wrapped around remote monitoring of patients. But there's some things, yeah, you're not going to replicate in person with AI anytime soon. But some of the predictors and stuff John was talking about, I think are going to be key of getting that data. So the kind of Internet of Things, tracking, you know, patients and information, vitals and things like that, that's going to be coming across to your provider more and more. I can see in the future. So.
Yeah, so John, again, I think I would love to see your reaction, right? While you're doing telemedicine, how do you take care of these patients who are not technology savvy, the elderly, right? Will they be left out of this system? So again, your reaction and comments, please.
Yeah, so I think the reality is that you have to have some technology savviness to function in society nowadays. I would say that let's say you have somebody who has some sort of sensory impairment, blind, deaf, or something else. I would actually say that technology and many of the things that we're talking about actually can facilitate that encounter. So for instance, if somebody is deaf and needs some sort of interpreter in a brick and mortar environment, they would always have to have somebody come in with them. Whereas if they have most of their encounters as telemedicine, it'd be very easy to put that third person interpreter, who could be in Minnesota or North Dakota, supporting multiple deaf patients across the country, or actually even across the world. So I do think that there are ways that we can actually make it better for those types of patients. And again, it goes back to this, not having technology be the complete answer, but use technology then to be the convener and the catalyst for bringing more humanness into our processes.
Sure. And I think Lisa is asking, and this is for you, Justin. She's asking, is there a version of telemedicine for banking? Do you have telebanking? I mean, like a video, I mean, I don't know, I'll let you comment on that.
Yeah, so I think with our banking organization, we are different from like the traditional branch banking, right? We don't have any branches, ATMs and things like that. But I would say a lot of the things that we're starting to work on and continuing to work on with internet banking, mobile banking, right? We're trying to make sure that there is more of an internet presence or a telepresence. I will say the one thing that we did right was we moved to virtual closings with most of our clients, right, during the pandemic. So we found ways to get in front of clients without having to physically be there. We'll continue to do that, but I think if you look at the banking industry as a whole, mobile deposits, everything you can think of in terms of how you would interact in a branch is now offered through all banking applications. But going back to John's point, if you're you have to have some type of technical savviness to function in society today. And I think banking's no different, right? I mean, if you're not used to, if you would rather take physical money into a bank and deposit it, there is no replacement for that today, right? So there's always going to be that, give and take. But no, that's one of the biggest things we've worked on the last 18 months is making sure that we have more and more virtual options for our clients, because I'm sure there are going to be people moving forward that are still not comfortable with the face-to-face interactions.
Yep. Thank you, Justin. As I said, I keep saying, if you're still used to cash, you may be an outlier very soon. So, so with that, I think, again, I want to take an opportunity to thank the panelists. Thank you for a very engaging conversation. Audience, I told you you're in for a treat. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. So again, it was a great pleasure hosting this panel. And again, before I hand it over to Monica, thank you one more time for such an engaging discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Monica, back to you, please.
Yeah, we'll hand it over to Audrey.
Okay.
Oh,
Back
hey.
to you, Audrey.
Hi, everyone. Can you see me? Okay, good. I've been moving around and there's like a massive tree people that are cutting trees everywhere here. And I think it was from the storm. I don't know if everyone has had that issue, but we really got hit here in Squirrel Hill. So let's just, first of all, thank you, Manish. Thanks everyone for being here. We have a networking time right now. So I think I encourage everyone to stay and have an opportunity to network. There's a couple of things that I think Monica will give some cues or Taylor will, and we can break out into rooms. But I just want to tell everyone before we do that we have a few things coming up in the next few weeks that you might be interested in. This afternoon at 2 p.m., we launch our new programming. I don't know if any of you recall that every single day since the beginning of COVID, we did a show at noon, and we landed that jet about 2 weeks ago after doing almost 300 interviews. And I'm sure people were tired of seeing me each and every day, but we reached thousands and thousands of people. It was sort of insane. We even broke Zoom, that they didn't even know how to fix it. So today it's Beyond BAU. We're starting a new series. We're doing it a little different. And today we are having a conversation with Representative Ed Gainey. And Ed Gainey looks like he will be our next mayor. And this will be the first time he's coming out and having a conversation. So we're pretty excited about that. So look for those kinds of engagements from us. Then we also have, let's see, the next update, we're going to celebrate we're going to celebrate CIOs. How could I forget that? CIOs and CISOs, and that's coming up. This is the last time we're going to do anything virtual, though. We're doing a virtual event, and we encourage each and every one of you to join us to celebrate others and to network. It is fun. It's on June 24th. I think that Taylor will put that in the link in case you haven't had a chance to connect with us, but it is fun. You can sit outside and you know, a lot of these guys and women are just doing amazing things in our region and never get recognized. And this usually is like a 700 to 800 person event when we do it in person. So anyway, don't miss it. We have some special announcements. We have lots of things going on. We have an apprentice program that is getting ready to launch. I'd like Taylor to put something about that in the chat as well, because we're going to be working on creating pathways for some tech jobs, and we're doing it in a certified apprenticeship model. And we have lots of people that are engaged, including CGI. And it is our way of creating pathways for people who perhaps didn't have access to jobs in tech and innovation. And they actually will be not only as a certified program, but it is also a program that is going to allow people to be paid and have a job from the minute they start the program. So companies have stepped up. They're very, very excited. I know that we're already in conversation with Highmark. I can't say the same for some of the rest of you, but we probably will. And we're pretty excited about the opportunities there. So look for that. We're doing a major announcement next week. In August, believe it or not, August is around the bend, and we have Tech Fest and an annual golf outing, which is crazy. That's people have already signed up for golf and are ready to be out. And we have CIOs that are involved in that. That's always a fun event. And if you golf, you know, join us. If you don't golf, come to the happy hour. I forget where we're having it this year. I want to say Treesdale, but I'm sure that Taylor will smack me and say that I'm having it at the wrong place. But it is really a bunch of fun. We have to close the place down for wherever we are. And let's see. And then any other information, we have events coming up. We have Athena coming up. We have Tech 50 in the fall, 25 years of Tech 50. It's going to be our silver anniversary, and we're going to have a lot of fun. So we're going to split you all up into smaller groups. Each networking session will be 10 minutes or so, and we'll change the groups up midway. And then I just encourage you to share, get to know one another, share your LinkedIn profiles, whatever you feel comfortable, and just start off, you know, like taking 20 to 30 seconds, introducing yourself, and have a conversation from there. I really thank all of you for joining us. It's another beautiful day in Pittsburgh, even though they are taking massive trees down in my neighborhood from that illustrious storm that we had. Everyone stay safe. It was great listening to this dialogue today. It's very validating, and it's very consistent in terms of what we're hearing all across the ecosystem. Thank you, Manoj, for moderating, and take it away, Taylor.